The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome everyone, and we are going to do a Business Insights Explorer presentation. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are today. We do have a fairly large audience, and we have a lot packed into the presentation, so without any further ado, we're going to get started. So, the focus of today's BIE lesson is going to be about this thing called the Explorer. But there are two other areas in Business Insights that are worth a mention, at least at the beginning here. So if you look in your Sage menu, everybody has this Business Insights module here. And there's these three pieces, the dashboard, the reporter, and the explorer. So what I'm going to do is just briefly display this dashboard feature and talk about that as kind of an introduction. So the dashboard here is part of Business Insights, and these are pre-configured dashboard elements. You can't adjust them, but what you do is you set up a dashboard based on a user, so you tell it what elements that user gets. So if the user is an accounts payable, they may get the accounts payable charts and information in the dashboard, but maybe not anything else. I'm just going to kind of scroll down here and look at some of the other types of information you can get. There's information in here about purchases. Here you can see top vendors. Any of these underlying things are a direct connect to that. So in this case, you'd open up those vendors. A link to a report will actually open up the report. There's the similar type of stuff for accounts receivable here. Let me blow this up a little bigger. As you move on down, you can evaluate cash for the AR area. Here's your receivable aging area. Here's sales information about top customers. Again, you can click any of those and go right into the customer. And for you financial types, there's balance sheet details here. You can run financials. You can see some current information. You can get to summary information. And there's ratio analysis in here as well. Okay, so just kind of scrolling down, showing some of the different things that are here. So for those of you who didn't know that was there, this is a really good quick hitter. Isn't customizable. You just simply pick and choose from pre-built dashboard elements based on the user. All right, that's it for the dashboard. Now the reporter, what this is a front end to Crystal. So, Sage 100 comes with Crystal reports. There's many reports right on the report menus that you all use. Those are all Crystal for the most part, unless you're on an older version. And you can also create your own custom reports. The problem with most people creating their own custom reports is it does require a degree of technical expertise and understanding how the database is built, how it relates to each other, how to link tables, and so on. So the purpose of this this Business Insights Reporter feature is it's a front end to Crystal where you don't really have to know any of that stuff. You simply click the Create a New Report button. You go through a wizard, you pick a view that has certain information in it. So you look through the views, you pick one that has what you think you want, and it's a point and click. I want these fields, I want them sorted like so, I want them grouped like so, and then it builds the report for you. So here's one that I built just fairly quickly. We're just going to go ahead and run this report to take a quick look at a Business Insights Reporter report. And we'll just do the preview here. This one's called the Customer Drop-Off. And its job was simply to lay out customer information, a little bit on balances, did they have an opener order amount, and what was the date of their last activity compared to their date established. The purpose of this was to identify customers who maybe hadn't had any activity in a recent period of time so that we might contact them, and see if there's something we can do to get their business back, sell them something new. All right, that's it. That's all I'm going to cover on the dashboard and the reporter. The rest of the focus of this webinar is going to be on the Explorer feature. So here under the Business Insights module, we have this Explorer menu. This has all of the views, all of the Explorer views in the entire Sage 100 system. If we go underneath a particular module, we can see that there's also views relative to just that module under that module. So depending on where you are, you're not going to see customer views under the inventory module, but you would see the inventory and customers under the BIE. So up here under BIE, it's kind of one-stop shopping. And I'll tend to run through my Explorer screens here just because I can get access to everything. So just kind of in terms of getting some orientation here, let's just open up a view. All right, so what is BIE? What does it really allow you to do? It's a way of looking at the data, inquiring on the data, drilling down on the data, and even kind of massaging the data for presentation to yourself to give the information to you the way you want to see it. This BIE functionality can replace a lot of Crystal reports. Not all Crystal reports, but it can replace a lot of them, particularly the more simple they are. So what we're going to do is just talk about this interface for a minute, and I'm going to turn on something here called the navigation pane as part of our discussion. Normally when you launch this thing, you'll see it look something like this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just talk about the different elements here. So you have a toolbar up here, there's several toolbars, and you can move these around. You can even kind of customize these to a degree. So this is the view toolbar here. So you'll see as we go into different views, we'll have a forward and back button that will be available. This is a drill into preview feature. We'll see that, and we can open up other features here. So we'll play a little bit around with that. You have this little toolbar down here. It's called the data toolbar. It's got your typical sorting features. It's got a filter builder feature. It's got abilities to refresh data and toggle filters on and off. Over here, this toolbar here is called the Explore toolbar. So just like in Sage 100, when you go to your stock reports, all these BIE views come in a standard setting. And what we'll be doing is seeing the ability for us to create customizations and save them as other settings. So you always have the standard setting there. This is the Tools toolbar down here. This does things like gives you access to column selections. It does grouping, summary footers, and group summary footers. We're definitely going to be playing with that today. Now up here, this main part of the grid, this is kind of what I call the main working area. They call that the data view grid, sometimes called the upper view grid. You might hear me call it the primary grid. Down below here, we have a preview pane. All right, so, and this is resizable. The concept here is whatever you pick up here, it shows the information, the details for that down below. So for example, I've just highlighted this Breslin customer, and in my preview, I have customer sales history by period here. And so it's showing me that information down below because that's my view that I currently have activated. If I was looking at, say, sales orders, for example, I change that over here on my preview. Now I'm seeing the current sales orders for Breslin. So it's just same customer. I'm just changing what kind of information I'm seeing down below. Okay. Now, the status bar. This thing at the very bottom is your status bar. It just says what view you're in on the left, what your user logon is. I'm triple lot today. And what company you're in. This is AO3. This tells you how many rows are in the upper view and how many rows are in the lower view. So if I just change that back to, I don't know, history invoices, for example, nothing has changed in the upper view. I still have 25 rows there, but now because I'm looking at different information down below, I'm seeing that there's 3 rows of history invoices. All right, and then we'll talk about this navigation pane. So I already talked a little bit about what the preview setting here does, just changes the information in the current view, what you have in below. So if we go to the Explore, this is just another way for us to open other information. So in other words, I could go to the history invoices, and there's those same history invoices that were down below before, and now they're on the top because I've pulled up a view that has those. I can just go back to where I was. And then last but not least is the tasks. So, and we'll play with all these in today's webinar. So when I'm on the tasks button in this navigation pane, it gives me these list of tasks. And what's listed here will be relative to the view that you're in. So we're getting things that are kind of related to AR and sales order because we're in a customer view. So the idea here is I could be on a customer record and just click any of these things and it would automatically open me up to that. For example, I could click on customer maintenance and it's got a memo popping here for this particular customer, but then I can open up that customer that I was on, see any information I need to see, update any records, go look at any information that's not on my screen that I might need for further detail. And I'm just going to close that. Okay, So that's kind of the basic orientation of the screen, how it's laid out. Of course, you can, move these things left and right. You can pin this here and have it pop out, or you can delete it. I tend to delete it and then pop it in when I actually need it. All right, some basics, more basics that we're going to cover, and then we'll do some more advanced things along the way. So the first thing we can do here is just note that we have a data view filter here. And I'm going to close this. I'm going to open up a different view. And let's see here. Let's do these sales order view. Okay, here we are. We're going to play around with this one for a little bit. So we have drop-down filters, and just right out of the gate, every one of these has these little black drop-down things. So this is exactly what an Excel data filter is, if you're familiar with that. And that's one of the things that makes this kind of easy, is it's very grid-like, like Excel is, so it's not hard to figure out. So, for example, if I click this drop-down right here, and I tell it, hey, show me the O2s, it just filtered that immediately. Now, it might be kind of hard to see, but that little black drop-down data filter kind of icon there turned blue. I don't know if you can see it, but it did turn blue. It's just an indication that that is a column that's currently filtered. I can change it back to all. And anytime I've done a filter in a given data session, right down here, this filter indicator has a little short-term memory. So if I want, I could just click it back just like that. So I can filter here, or I can filter down here. I'm going to uncheck it to put it back. Now, another thing we can do is we can move fields left and right. So very easy to do. You just highlight a field with your mouse, left click, and then move it where you want. So, for example, if I wanted to put the, salesperson or something next to the customer, I could just grab the salesperson or any other field, move it around, and you see the two green arrows pointing where it wants to drop it. So I can just let it go with my mouse wherever I want it. And again, as I change the records, the information down below shows, it updates. Okay. Now let's show the filter builder, basic concept. So whereas we can filter on these columns, multiple columns, click and filter, like I showed you for the division here, there's also the filter builder down here. So this is where you can do a little bit more complicated filters, let's say, and kind of do it in one place. So you've got this kind of root here, it's set to and. So you can make your filter change. You can use ors, not and, not or. And is the most common. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do a small filter that maybe shows, the division is 01, for example. I can hit apply, and it does the same type of a thing. So we'll play around with that some more as we get going. Okay, let's talk about how do we get rid of fields. I'm just going to put this back to stock. All right, let's see here. Let's get rid of a field. So if I'm looking across this data here, I see this deposit column, and it's all zeros. Suggests that we may not be using the deposit features. So we'll talk about ways to remove fields. The easiest way to remove a field is just to go over it with your mouse, left click with your mouse button, and simply drag the field off the screen in any direction you nilly-willy choose. I'll just leave that there for now. You can also click this little button in this upper little corner here. It's hard to see, but that is the visible columns button. So if you click that, it's going to show you all of the columns that are currently in your upper grid. So there's the deposit amount. All I'd have to do is simply uncheck it, and you can see it's taken it off the screen already. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to go into the column settings itself. There's lots of ways to do this. You've got right-click on those little header fields there and go into column settings, and you can uncheck the field right here. Here's that same list of fields that are currently displayed. I could uncheck it there and check it there. And last but not least, you could come in here under the edit column settings and get to the same place. I tend to do things just right on the screen with my mouse unless I have to go in there to do something more advanced. You'll kind of pick up on that as I go through today. All right, so let's just do a compound filter just to show something more than one. Let's do, let's say that the division is going to be a 2. So we're interested in something that, and then we'll come in here. This will actually read your data. So you can hand key a value, or you can let the system look at the data and you can pick from the list. So this is an and, so I'm looking for a division is 02, and I'm going to do, let's see, I'm going to do the order date. So let's see here. There's order date. And I'm going to set this to a particular value. And we're dealing with demo data here. And this demo data is dated 5 of 2020. So you'll notice that there's a lot of 2020 dates, especially in May. I can hit the apply button there, hit OK, and now I've got this little thing down here telling me what it's filtered. I've also got the information up above showing me that's what it is. And if I click my drop down, you can see the other filters that I've applied in this session. Okay, so that's a little bit on the filter. Now, if I just want to turn that off quickly, boom, I'm right back to where I was. So pretty easy to turn that on and off. Now we'll talk about sorting, just basic stuff, basic tools here, and then we'll use these tools a little more. So any column that you've got here, such as the division, if I just click that, it automatically sorts that column. Hard to see, but next to the drop-down filter, there's a little triangle. I don't know why they made it so hard to see. I doubt you can see it on the video, but right now it's pointing up, meaning it's sorting in ascending order. If I click that again, it's pointing down now, which means it's ascending, it's in descending order. All right, so there you go. That's a little bit just easy way to sort. And then we'll talk about adding fields. So just the same thing, it's just the same thing in reverse. If you want to add a field, you just can click this button here, pick from anything in that list, or you can do more advanced things like going into the column settings, and you can add fields from any of the linked tables. So it's very similar to what the Business Insights Reporter does with the Crystal front end. The BIE does the same thing, the Business Insights Explorer, BIE. They are collections of pre-grouped tables that determines what all you have access to in a given view, just like in a particular given view for doing a BIE reporter. So one question that's a very common one, I'll just tell you the answer is no, you do not get to add other tables here. It's not like Crystal Reports where you can have total customization. So you have some flexibility within that range. So adding fields is literally that simple. You can just check the boxes and they'll show up in there. All right, grouping, another key concept with reporting. There's this big gray kind of bar across the top, and it says drag a column header here to group by that column. So hypothetically, maybe we'd want to group by the salesperson. So if I move the salesperson up here and I just let it go with my mouse, right now I can see that we've got a grouping now. So I could see that Jenny Hernandez here has 5 customers which look like orders in here, versus Harvey's got 7. And you can collapse these, and you can kind of see the detail there, and you can add summaries and summary footers. We'll be doing some of that today. All right, now another thing, so once you've worked with a view, and sometimes people do this up front, but when you're ready to save your work, you don't want to save over the standard. You want to save it as something else. So when I'm ready to save, I'm probably going to just use this file save as, and then I'll give it a name here. So whatever name you want to call it. And then you can tell it whether it's a public or private setting. So a public setting means everybody can access your view and they can change it. A private setting means you're the only one who can, only the user who created it can change it. I'm not going to bother saving this. And you cannot delete the standard views, by the way. So I'm not going to save that. And the other thing to keep in mind is when you create a custom view like that, if you have more than one legal entity, meaning you track books for more than one company code in Sage, those views are visible to all company codes. So potentially you could build a view and you might be able to use it in more than one entity. So just a note on that. Okay. All right, we're going to open up the customer view next, and we're going to do some funner stuff. All right, so here's your stock standard customer view. And, you know, this has some great information in it. Notice that it has the current balance here, and it has the aging categories, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you set up your AR module, there are settings in there that you define what these are. So one thing that I might do here easily is just to give these a little more meaning is what are they in my world? So I know what a current balance is, but I may not know what aging 1 means. So I could easily just go into the column settings by right click there, or I could just click, that's probably the best way. Go into my column settings. It's highlighted on aging 1. And if what I want to do is just change the description, I can just type 30 days. Just like so, and hit OK. Now it's saying 30 days. It's a little bit more meaningful to me now than it would have been maybe before. All right, so here, let's see. We've got a current balance. We've got a 30, 60, 90, and 120. That's what the aging 1 through 4 is. Let's say I wanted a total past due balance. And how would I do that? We're going to do our first calculated field. We're going to right-click, go to the column settings. And this is the place where you can add a calculated field. Notice the calculated button. So I'm going to hit the calculation here, and it wants me to give it a name. So I'm going to call it past due amount. And here under the expression builder, this is where you do the heavy lifting and tell it what the formula is. So we're going to start out by just doing a basic formula. I'm going to expand my tables. We'll be working with calculated fields functions later. And what we're going to do is we're going to go find the information that we want to add up. So I happen to know that in the AR customer tables where those fields are. So there's the aging category 1 through 4. I'm just going to click it, the first one, type plus 2 plus, whoop, there's 4. I meant to click 3. They don't have to necessarily be in order. All right, so there we go. And I'm just going to hit OK there. And now I've got my past due amount, but I'm not done yet. So here's my field. I can control the field width. I can also set a column formatter. So the format here is going to tell it how that data is going to display. So in this case, currency makes sense, right? Okay, because it's a dollar amount, so currency. And now I'm going to do something very cool. I'm going to use this column level formatter. So depending on the format up above, if I check this box, it's going to light up one of these format options down below. So because this is currency, it's lighting up the currency format. If it was a date, it would light up the date format, and so on. So what is this format thing actually doing here? So you can click the drop-down options and pick from that. That's fine. But what it's really saying here is whatever format you have selected, it's saying that this is how I display a positive number. So it's got a dollar sign. If it's thousands, it's going to put the comma, and it's going to put the decimals in. If I'm a negative number, it says I'm going to put you in brackets. Common technique for us accounting types. And if I'm just a 0, I'm just going to be a 0. If that's all I want to do, I can just leave it like that. But here's something cooler that you can do. Now let's say that in this case, it's the past due amount. Let's say I actually want that to display in red because it's past due and I'm trying to draw attention to it. So I can put my mouse in there, see it blinking, where the dollar sign is. I can right click and I can do insert color tag. And I've got a list of colors here, and I'm just going to pick the red. And then notice it inserted that red right there. All right. If I wanted to give different color codes to either of these other two formats, I could do that. In this case, I don't. I just want it to display in red if it's a positive number. So I hit OK there. It always adds your new fields to the very right column. So we already know how to move that. All we have to do is just drag it with our mouse, put it right in here where we want it, and now we've got our current balance, our past due, and a breakdown with our aging categories. All right. I'm going to go ahead and save this at this point. So File, Save As, and I'm just going to give it today's date, 05/14/19, and I'm going to save it as a public setting. So hit OK, and now my setting has the name that I picked plus my standard, or I can go to any others that I have. So if I want to go back to the standard view, there it is, there's stock. I can go back to my public view, and here it is. It's all there. All right, Boolean formulas. We're going to do a Boolean thing next here. All right, so what is Boolean? You know, it's this term we sometimes hear out there. Really what it is, it's some kind of true, false, yes, no, black, white type of logic. So what Boolean logic means is it's looking at a piece of data, could be a number, could be a string data, and it's going to evaluate that as being either a true or false. So by definition, numeric values with Boolean formatting, Boolean logic, any number that's a 0 is considered false. Any number that is not 0 is considered true. If you're looking at string data, the numbers 1, 9, T, and Y are the ones that are considered true. And if the string starts with any other values other than a 1, a 9, a T, or a Y, then it's considered false. Don't ask me who makes these rules. That's just what it says. So one thing we could do is we could apply a Boolean formula to our past due amount to flag a customer is either past due or not. So what we're going to do is make a new formula. Go into our column settings. We're going to do a calculated formula. It's going to be called past due, yes, no, and I must have typed that in there. We've already got the calculation, so we don't need to do it again. There's my past due amount. I'm going to use the same formula right there. Boom, done. What I am going to do that's different now is I'm going to use the Boolean format. This is a good way to kind of show you how these formatting techniques work. Same formula doing something different. All right, so here under my format here, I'm going to pick Boolean, and then I'm going to use the column level formatter to open up the Boolean section. So here's my Boolean section. Remember at the beginning I said it's yes, no, black, white, true, false. There's those things. So I'm going to leave it as a yes, no. Only I'm going to do a little power to it. I'm going to say if you're past due here, I want you to be, I want you to be in red. So I'm going to insert the color tag if it's past due yes. And if it's a no, I'm going to tell it you're green. I'm going to pick the bright green because I think it'll show up better, hopefully on your screen. So I'm going to hit OK there. And I'm going to come over here. It just added my past due yes, no. I'll bring that right on over here. I'll park it right in front of my formula. And sure enough, everything that's a 0 says no. Everything that has a past due amount has a red yes. So that's another way of, you know, applying a Boolean formula to give you something different than, say, the raw value. All right. Now, of course, now that I've done that, I could sort by any of these as well. So I could say, you know, sort by past due. I could just click the column. There's all my no's. Click it again. Now I got all my past dues right at the top. Now, if I'm doing collections work, that might be helpful for me to have that right at the top. It might even be more helpful to filter it out so I don't see the ones that aren't past due. But that's up to you, the user. All right. Let's do another one here. We're going to do a named value formula. So let's see here. We're going to come over here and we're going to look at the customer status. All right, so we're just going to go add the customer status, column settings, and we're going to look down the left here to see if we see it. We don't see it, so we're going to add a field. And the customer status is in the AR customer table. So we're going to look at all the fields we have in customer table here are available. And we're going to come down here until we find that customer status. There it is. So if I just click it, and do nothing else, what did that do for me? It just gave me the customer status value, but it's a code. It doesn't necessarily have a meaning to me. Now, I might know what those codes mean, but then again, I might not. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little power here by doing a name field and have a little fun while we're at it. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to take our field, the customer status that we created, and we're going to just add a column level formatter to it, and we're going to make this one a named value. So name value, and then we're going to open up that column level formatter. Now what we're going to do here is we're just going to add some values. So what we're doing here is we're giving it in the left box the value that the database has, and in the right box we're going to tell it what we want it to display for us that represents that. So here we're going to say, if you are an I, capital I, we're going to just say you're a bad customer. So the I represents in the Sage database inactive. So the reason why this is a valuable tool is you may not always know what those values mean, or you may not remember them, but if you code it like this, anybody who looks at this will know what you mean because you will have translated the code to something meaningful. So I'm going to put in an A here, and I'm just going to call these guys good customer. And then I'm going to put in the last value, which is a T. In the database, it represents temporary. So active, inactive, and temporary are the actual meanings. And if it's temporary customer, I'm going to put I'll put in never see him again. And then I'll click the add. So as many codes as I need to interpret, I put in the list, I hit OK, and now I have my customer status for the I, A, and T. They are now displaying good customer, bad customer, and never see them again. So now that has a little more meaning possibly. And you notice that you don't have to give it the actual meaning that Sage calls it, inactive, active, temporary. It's whatever you want to call it. So it's good for you. Okay, let's see here. I don't necessarily need to save this, but why not? I'll just hit the save button now. Now that it has a setting name, all I have to do is click the save. And we're going to go ahead and close that. Now we're going to open up a different view. So we're going to try to draw an example that drives that seasonality analysis here. So under Business Insights, under the Explorer, we're going to try to find our item transactions view. So here's the item transactions. And we're going to go ahead and save this right off the bat so we can work with it. So that's one of my techniques. You can save it anywhere along the way or anywhere at the beginning. So I'm going to say save setting as, and again, I'm just going to give it, I'm going to call it seasonality. Okay. And there we go. We've got a name now. And we're going to play with this a bit. So now what we're going to do in this example is we're going to try to create a view that's going to help us analyze what our busy months of the year are as defined by dollars sold as well as number of transactions done. So we are not going to be focused on cost as much, but we're focused more on the sales side. So here's a unit cost I don't need. I don't need this field. What do we do when we don't need a field? We just drag it off the field. And I don't really need this extension either. I don't even know what that's showing me, but it's mostly zeros. So got rid of those. Now, notice over here under the type, this is an inventory view, so it's showing every type of a transaction that could have happened in inventory. Now, I'm focused on seasonality from a sales standpoint, so I'm really most interested in something that happened in SO. Okay, so these are sales order related transactions. Now, I'm going to want to filter this, and I'm going to try to analyze the seasonality for the 2020 year because it's the demo data. So what I'm going to do is try to build a filter that gives me only the 2020 transactions, or at least back a year. So, so we'll go here, and we'll say the transaction date is between, and we'll say 5/31/2019 and our demo date 5/31/2020. Okay, so if I'm analyzing that year, I hit apply, I hit OK, and now I'm seeing the transactions only in that 12-month period that I'm after. All right, we're getting there. Now we need some customer information here. Let's change this back to sales order only. There we go. And I'm going to save this. So don't forget to save your transactions along the way. So we need customer information here. So let's do column settings and see if we can find it. I don't see it from my quick pick list under my available field. So I'm going to go into here, and probably it would be under here. And I'm just going to go down the list, and here's the AR division. So for those of you who have divisions turned on, you know that that's part of the customer ID. For those of you who don't, it's always 00, and you may not see it, but it is part of the ID. So I think this one uses division, so I'm going to add that. And then here, I'm just going to call this AR div to shorten it up. And probably I'm just going to guess that 110 might be big enough. And I'm going to say OK to that. And then I'm going to add the customer number. And let's see, customer number right there. And I'm just going to leave it like that. All right, so now I've identified the customers who are involved in these transactions. All right, now notice we got a bit of a problem here. So we've got a quantity that's showing in negative. So we've got to figure out how to get this to show some information that's going to be more the way we would see it from a sales standpoint. So because we're looking at it from the inventory standpoint in a view, it's saying that these minus quantities, they're actually the inventory taking the quantity out related to a sale. So the problem here that you might have is here's the extended price, and then there's the unit price. So the problem is that these are showing in negatives. So it isn't really what I want. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple formulas here to flip these around to display the numbers as positive the way we want it. All right, so we're going to do a formula here. So we'll do calculated. We're going to call it extended price. Well, let's call it, let's just call it extended price. Why not? Okay, so transaction history, there's the extended price. And all I'd have to do is really multiply that by a -1. And I might want to set that to currency and say OK. All right, so now I don't need this extended price. I've got the same numbers. They're just displaying them positive. So I'm going to get rid of you. And the quantity looks funny too, the way it's displaying it, just because it's the inventory view. So I'm going to fix that too. And we'll do a calculated, we'll just call it quantity. And we'll find our quantity and do the same thing. There it is. Transaction quantity times -1. Hit OK. And this one here, I'm going to format that as numeric. And I'm going to use my column level formatter. And if I don't sell in fractional quantities, it means that I may not want decimals to display. So another way I can format this, other than adding color tags and other things, is I can modify that format to take those decimals out. And now I have a numeric field just showing in whole numbers. Okay, so now I've got my quantity, and I've got my unit price, and my extended price, and I'm all good. And then I'm going to get rid of this quantity because we don't need it anymore. All right, starting to look better. Starting to look better. All right. Now let's see if we can focus in on the seasonality. What we really need to know is by month what happened here. So we're going to create a field called month of year invoiced. All right, so calculated month of year invoiced. All right, so this one here, we're going to use a function. Well, why not? We've done everything, just about everything else. So if I click the functions down here, you know, you have a lot of functions that you can pick from. So, and these are alphabetical. So I'm just going to get down here to the M's. And there's one called month. All right, so if I click month, it puts the function input up above. And then what I have to do is I have to fill in this part. It wants to know what dates am I using to use this function. So the dates that I'm using is going to be our transaction date. So here we go. We'll pick the transaction history. We'll find the transaction date and we'll put it in there. And there's the transaction date. Just highlight it, insert it, and hit OK. All right. And then since we're looking for a month of year invoiced, we want that to be a numeric value. And we want to use the column level formatter because I want it to display a 1 for January, not 1.00. So I'll take those out there to clean that up. And now I have my month of year invoiced value. Now there's another reason I made that a numeric value. And we're going to see that in a minute. But that means I can do stuff with numbers. I can do math with numbers. If it's not a number, I may not be able to do math with it. All right. So let's see here. Transaction date. If I just move that over there and kind of park that, it does look like it's lining up. All the April invoices are a 4, the January invoices a 1, and so on. All right, now we're going to try to make this thing more meaningful. We're going to use the grouping pane. So here's our grouping pane, and we're going to group this by month of year invoiced. So if I take this and I left click with my mouse and I just drag it up there, then it has created these groups. And I'll just shrink this up so you can kind of see it. If I collapse all the groups, you can see now that it's organized or grouped my data based on that month of year invoiced. And it's telling me how many items each one of these has. So if I open up one, I'll just open up this one. Here's all the ones for month 3. They're all right there. All right, so there they are. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add this summary footer here. So if I click that button right there, it lighted up some fields down here, down below. So what we're going to do is a couple things. We're going to come under the extended price, and we're just going to come down here and we're going to right click, and depending on the field, the format of the field, what shows up in these footers depends. So it's a numeric field, so these are my choices. So I want to have a sum of all my invoices. So that's going to give me the sum for the entire year. Now, month of year invoice, I'm going to come under this one and I'm going to do a count to that one. So that's telling me there are 677 invoices in this entire year, adding up to 1.1 million in revenue. Now what I'm going to do, but if I open this up and I go to the bottom of my little section here, that's the end of January, for example. So I don't have any January totals. So what I really need to do to make this work is I need to add that. So here we're going to add a group summary footer, and you can choose to make it always visible or not, or only when it's expanded. So I'm just going to click that, and I've got the same exact boxes that opened up before. Now they're open up here. So here I can do a count, and here I'll do a sum. And then I'm going to say it's always visible. And then if I collapse all my groups, now I can see the totals. I can see how much I have in each period. I can see how many transactions are in each period, which means I can actually, do stuff with this now. So what we'll do next is we'll see if we can graph this at all. All right, so here's your chart tab. We've been working on this data view grid. We're going to come over here to this chart tab, and we're going to try to add a chart. So we're just going to call it seasonality. You got lots of different choices for different types of charts you could do. I'm going to leave this as a bar chart. Since we're analyzing data for a year in terms of seasonality, probably makes sense to make that a 12. I'm going to leave it as a 3D chart. And what we're going to do is come down here and see, there's my formula for extended price. And we're going to group this by the month of year invoiced. And we're going to sort it in, let's see, sort ascending. I might have blown that somehow, but this is how you could potentially get out the different periods. Let's see, sort by month of year invoiced. There we go. That's more of what I was looking for. And now I can see real easily where my peaks and valleys are, or my seasonality. Now, if I wanted to just change it to month of year invoice, so this is looking at the dollars now, but if I just went back up here and changed this to month of year invoice instead of that, now I'm seeing the number of transactions in each of these periods that were represented there. So clearly the May is my busy month. You could actually do a combination like so. It doesn't always line up depending on how the values are, but you aren't limited to one series per se. So anyway, that's kind of what I was going for there. All right. Let's talk about exporting a little bit. So back here on the data view grid, if we expand these things out, there's exporting options. So you can do file export options, and you can choose the selected records only. There's a little checkbox there. Or if that's not checked, it means everything in your primary grid is going to export. So I'm just going to turn that off for a minute. If I wanted to only do certain records, and if we get time, I'll do that example, I would just highlight with my mouse. I would just pick them in these little grid boxes off to the left. For now, I'm just going to do File, Export Options, and I'm going to choose Microsoft Excel. And we'll drop this into Excel. So it's a very nice feature because unlike Crystal reports, which are heavily formatted most of the time, unless they're built specifically for exporting to Excel, they usually come out all wonky, technical term. So what's nice about the BIE, it doesn't matter if it's a custom view or not, it always exports cleanly into Excel because it's from a grid to a grid. So what you don't get when you export to Excel is you don't get your group summary footers or your totals. It's just the raw data. So watch out for that. That's just by design. It doesn't give you that other stuff. Okay, let's see here. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about printing. So unlike the export, if we said print preview, it does keep your groupings. So if you print a report, unlike exporting it to Excel, it will keep your information. You can mess around with this. You can go to the format and title. You may want to give this something other than item transactions, like seasonal report, something like that. They didn't hire me for my typing. There we go. you can mess around with this all you want. Go to the properties, you can play with the fonts and so on and so forth. And that's pretty much it. Then you can print it. All right, I'm not going to worry about printing it, of course. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to try to show a couple more things in the time we have available. And we're just going to show an example of how you might use this Business Insights Explorer feature with your custom office, along with some other integration that you have. So in this example I'm going to do, it's going to be a collections example. Yeah, seasonality, might as well save it. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up another view. And we've got a view in here. It's partially built, but I'm calling it my collections dashboard. So it's kind of similar to some of the stuff we did earlier where we've got a total balance. We've got past due amounts showing in red. The current amounts are showing in green. We are going to note that these fields over here, caller ID, last called, call notes, all of these are user-defined fields that we created out of thin air. So what I'm going to do is just go in here and first show you that. If you've got user-defined fields and you click the Add button here, in this case, my user-defined fields in this example are in my customer table. If I go to the bottom, they tend to show up at the bottom. There's all these fields here, the ones that start with UDF. So when I brought in the caller ID, I selected it, and all I did was I updated that UDF ugly description to be a nice, pretty one, gave it the width I want, and applied any formatting that I thought was appropriate. So how would you use this in real life? What's an example? Let's do View, Navigation Pane. So hypothetical example, let's say I'm the person doing collections. So I say, here we can see that there's information about past due balances. This happens to be grouped by the sales rep. So this guy here has a pretty far balance past due. In fact, there's some in almost every category. So maybe I'm going to call this guy. So what I could do is I could do a couple things. I've got his phone number. I can see that. I could just call right off the screen here. And let's say I called the customer and I got him on the phone. And I said, hey, we've got some past due invoices here. And went over that. Would you be willing to make a credit card payment over the phone if you have PIE, credit card processing, or previously known as Sage Payment Solutions, or any other credit card functionality integrated with your Sage? The customer says, yes, I can make a payment on my past due balance. Great. I come right from here. I just go into my cash receipts, start a batch, process the credit card payment while the customer's right on the phone with me, get their authorization code. I can post that cash receipt whenever I want. I can come back here. Then I can launch customer maintenance. Go right over to that customer's collections tab where my UDFs are. I can update my call date, who called, update my notes, hit accept, hit close. Maybe I want to refresh this view real quick. So in case I made a note or something, I want to refresh it, hit the refresh button there, and I'm off to my next call. So pretty powerful way to work with the tools, kind of in conjunction with each other. Now, I think we have just enough time for me to do one more example. So let's go for it. So let's see here. I'm just going to change this back to the stock customer view. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to say an example is we have a big sale coming up. And we want to send out a promotional flyer to customers that letting them know that our sale's coming up, but we've got some criteria that we want to apply to who gets that letter. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the Business Insights Explorer to do that. So we're going to say the customer has to be somebody who purchased something within the last year, and they have to be in active status, and they need to not be on hold. So right now I've already got the on hold field here, and they're currently all set to no. So that's not going to be a problem. Now I need the customer status. So I'm looking across the top to see I only want active customers. I don't see that field. So I'm going to go to my column settings, and I'm going to find it. And let's see here. There it is. Customer status. And I'm just going to say OK. There's my customer status right here. I'm going to just move that over next to my on hold. And then we're looking for somebody who has done something in the last year. So we're going to go to column settings, and we're going to find the date of last activity. Okay, there we are. And let's see here. We might want to just set that as a date field and say OK. And then we'll move that over where we want it. Looks like right about there. Okay, so we've got our criteria. So now we're going to do a filter. So here's our filter. These are going to be the and. We're going to say the on hold is equal to no. The customer status equals active, and date of last activity is going to be, oh, something in the last year. So we're going to say 5/31 is between, and I'm just going to hand key it, 5/31/2019, and today's date, hypothetically, 2020. All right, so I've got a filter there. So now I've populated a list of customers that I think might apply to my list. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do a mail merge. All right, so, and I'm going to use this one in this example. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm only going to decide to do it to certain customers, even though I've got a list filter, just to show you how to pick certain customers as opposed to doing everything. So I'm going to go to File, Export Options. I'm going to tell it selected records only this time. And then I'm just nilly-willy going to come over here on my left, and I'm just going to start holding my control button down, and I'm just going to nilly-willy pick some customers. All right, there we go. I picked a few customers. And we will go ahead and see if we can do a mail merge. So File, Export Options. We've got this Microsoft Office merge, and we're going to do word merge. Okay, so let's see here. And we're going to use it. What it does is it exports this data to a CSV file, and then it can use that data in the CSV file to merge it into your Word. So let's see if this thing opens up. I did have a problem with my Microsoft early this morning that we aren't sure if it's entirely fixed in time for this presentation, but we're going to give it a shot. All right, so here we go. So now I'm in Word, okay? So normally what I would do here is I might insert a picture. So maybe I need my logo. And it's taking too long. Wouldn't be too difficult to insert a logo normally, so we'll just pretend there's a logo there. And then I'm going to try to type something basic here, dear, and then here's our mailings tab. So let's see here, insert merge field. These are all the fields that we had from our BIE view. So we're going to put dear customer name, and we'll put their address information in here real quick. So insert merge, we'll do address 1, 2, 3, city, state, and zip. All right, so now I just got to move these where I want them. All right, and then we'll say Now, this is going to be very brief, but you could type a much better letter, I'm sure. And let's see, salesperson. Okay. All right, so we've got our basic letter there. Add your logo, and then we're going to do finish and merge, and we're going to say edit the individual documents just to kind of see what we've got. So it's going to go out there. Did it do it? A little slow. There it did. But there it is. So here's our first letter for the first record that we had selected, and it's merged in their information. Looks like we've got some little polish to do here, which we could do. But now we could send these out or mail them out, whatever we need to do. So that's a great way of using the data in SACE to create documents or merges. Another hypothetical example of what you might be able to do with that is to send customers a letter offering them paperless office email delivery for their invoices. You have the customer data in the system, you have contacts, you have addresses. You could send them a letter and fill out a format where they fill out the name and the email address of the person that's supposed to get their paperless office invoices. Just another possible idea that you could use it for. And that is pretty much what I had to hope to cram into an hour for your webinar. And it looks like we are just barely over the time, but that concludes my presentation. Sasha, do you see any questions?
I don't see any questions, but again, if you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to either the CAM team or we will be distributing this webinar either this afternoon or tomorrow, and you can always reply directly to that email with any questions that you may have for Bruce or the rest of the team. Thank you so much, Bruce, for your presentation.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.